Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Live with the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. My name is Matt Bailey. I'm the National Ambassador for the Society here in Australia. Really excited to be doing the live virtual tasting with you, the Game Changers virtual tasting. On your invitation, it said you're joined by myself and Andrew Durbidge. I don't need these anymore. Hold on. It said you're joined by myself and Andrew Durbidge. Evening to everyone joining in. It's just myself tonight. Andrew has another commitment and could not join us as virtual, but I really appreciate you tuning in, opening your pack, and tasting a few game-changing whiskies that we're going to go through tonight. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. It looks like I am. It looks like I'm on the desk. The picture pictured on there is the pack as should be delivered to you by now. You should have it. You should have it in front of you. I've got mine here. Matt Waller's already first to jump in then. What? And Gary says, want a refund then. It's still me. I'm still here. But Andrew couldn't join us. Like I said, he's got tied up and there's been some he's just very busy at the moment, and there's a lot going on, but we're really excited to be able to host this virtual tasting with you. You still got all the whiskeys. You still got everything in front of you. So look, we're all going to get there in the end. I'm going to bring up the bigger screen just to show a few things that I wanted to James, I will quite gladly comment on the color of the whiskey in his absence. That's not a problem. But I just want to show you on the big screen here what we're looking at tonight, and that is the Game Changers virtual tasting from March Outturn. It was from our March Outturn. The whole Outturn theme was about game-changing whiskies. Can you do Andrew's parts too? I can, Gary. And evening to Darren. Great to see you, mate. Hope you're well. Evening to Mark. Great to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me tonight. Like I said, I'm going to cover Andrew's parts. This is the Game Changers virtual tasting. This is where it all started for the Society. This is sort of almost like a throwback, not in the way like the Vaults Collection tasting was, but in a way like the Game Changers is, and looking at some of the aspects of the Society that changed the game over the years. And we can thank people such as Pep Hills. There's a cask. There's the bottling of 1.1, the whiskey that started it all. Land Rover Bailey says, my wife, Champagne, and I are excited to join along for the first time. Land Rover Bailey, I'll take your word for it. Welcome aboard. G'day, guys, says Darren. Thank you so much. And this, like I said, as I was saying, there's cask 1.1. That's where it all started for the Society, and that's the guy who really got it all off the ground. That's Pip Hills there. And we're going to take a look through some of the journey of the Society, some of the game-changing moments, and some of these whiskies that are in our pack. So I don't want to talk too long now at the beginning. I want us to open our first whiskey of the night. I'm going to ask you to grab your sample. It might not be in order as on your menu. I've had a bit of a tinker with the box since we developed the menu. And yes, hope everyone's keeping dry tonight. It is absolutely torrentially raining in Sydney at the moment. It has been raining for about 4 days straight, but today has been by far the strongest rain we've seen in those 4 days. And so it's not just wet outside, it's soaking. Everything is just rivers of water flowing down the streets at the moment. So, look, we're all staying safe. It's all going well here. So there's a photo of Pip, as I was saying, and I was like, as I was getting up to, I'm changing the lineup a little bit tonight, as per your menu. So you've got your menu here, you've got your tasting mat. I hope you've got some glassware to open up, to pour into, I should say, and enjoy. A dry whiskey tasting. What? Another what? And a comment from Alex Moores. Look at the color on that. Pip Hills, 1983. There's the color comment. There's your menu. Now, don't just disregard the order in the menu, because we're going to move around a little bit for this one. So pay attention. We'll all have a lot of fun together and taste as we go. I'd like you to open up the first sample, which is Spice Cannon. So the first one we're going to have a look at is Spice Cannon. Now, here's Ewan Campbell, the guy who was responsible for creating Spice Cannon. And there he is with some ambassadors, and there he is enjoying a dram on a couch at the Vaults. Good-looking fellow. So he's our spirits manager, responsible for creating these heresy projects like you would have seen Exotic Cargo, Pete Fairy, Old Fashioned, Black Oak, things like that. And Spice Cannon is the latest one in his lineup, if you like, of special releases. There's the full bottle label, as you may or may not have seen. Very cool. So that's in your menu there. We're going to start with that one. So pour that into your glass if you haven't already. And I think this is going to be a really good one to start with. Just going to pour a bit of that one there. And I've just, and as per the requests of the stream, look at the color on that. So I think this is a really good one to start with because it's a little bit lower proof. It's quite sweet. It's almost an aperitif. It's a really good one to start with, start our evening with. Let's have a look at some of these comments coming in. Look out, Alex has arrived. Life of the party. Here he goes. And beard game. That's why Andrew opted out. He hasn't got his beard game on point at the moment. Look, I don't either. I couldn't even call this a beard. I just call this a light smattering of facial hair. A beard, I think the word beard has to be more reserved for bushy beards. That's a beard. This is just facial hair. There has to be So the first question that I'm already seeing come through from, I think that's from Calte, asks, when will this be available? That's a really good question. This is the only whiskey that's not available tonight. All the other whiskies that we're tasting tonight are available by the bottle on smws.com.au/shop. However, and only for members, of course. However, Spice Cannon is in April Outturn, which is only a couple of weeks away. So we're going to hold off on releasing this one formally until the April Outturn. And there's, I think, 60 or so to go around. Well, there'll be less than that because I've poured 2 or 3 bottles of this into these samples. So let's have a look at this. It's a blended malt. So let's examine what that means. You've got blended whiskey. You've got single malt whiskey. You've got single grain. You've got single malt. You've got single cask. You've got a few different variants. Blended malt, all that means is that it's all barley, 100% barley malted whiskey in that blend. So there's no grain whiskey component. There's no wheat, corn, rye, maize, or anything like that as a grain base for it. There's no grain base. It is all malt whiskey. So in this case, it's casks that Ewan has put together to create a harmonious blend that he's named Spice Cannon. Matured in a selection of bourbon, Oloroso, and Pedro Jimenez casks, predominantly sherry casks. The nose gives that away straight away. Predominantly sherry casks, predominantly Oloroso. I'm getting a lot of Oloroso notes straight away. Beard or maybe chin hammock. Yeah, chin hammock is a good one. That works. I haven't heard that before. That's a good one, James. Well done. So when I nose this straight away, very soft. Lovely, soft, like ripe fruits. That's very approachable. I've found so far that the heresy bottlings that we get through the society that Ewan's worked on, these are very special projects of his, are very much kind of like they're an expression of his blending skill, which is obviously getting better and better as he goes along as well, which is great to see. But they're also just a really enjoyable and I dare I say quaffable kind of whiskies that he's been producing. Things like if anyone here who managed to grab a bottle of Beachcomber, that was one of my favorites ever. That was just so rich and syrupy, yet so all at the same time light and approachable. So, g'day Jimmy. Okay. And Spice Cannon versus Big Swell, can't wait for April. Yeah, so April does have the this is in it. Spice Cannon is in April. So 50% blended malt, so no grain whiskey, all from a range of casks. Now you can make a blended whiskey from one distillery. It's uncommon. Loch Lomond are known for that, but you can't make. I don't think you could technically make a blended malt from one distillery. You'd need at least 2. So it's at least 2 distilleries in this. At least 2, might be more, might be more, way more. But it is. It's a blended batch. It only yielded 1,496 bottles total to the batch, and it's predominantly Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks. I get that instant like cinnamon nutmeg note. I'd love to see your tasting notes. Throw them in the comments, please. Like throw them up. I really do think that sort of lightly dusted, sugary cinnamon note that I get out of this is basically the spice aspect. It's that sort of like warm baked spices, fresh bread. Nutmeggy on the palate. Bit of like dusted nutmeg on the palate there. Oh. Quite a bit of sugar, like a hot chocolate sugar. Great sherry balance, says Darren Howie. I couldn't agree more. The sherry balance, I'm not inclined to add water to that, to be honest. But I could certainly drink a very full glass of that. Great tasting note from Matt here, who says it's got feisty coconut mattress and charred caramel. Overripe fruit on the nose, much lighter to taste, but a cool spicy build that gets dry towards the tip of the tongue. Oh, that's a good tasting note. Alex Moore says apple tart tartine. I can get that. Licorice for days. Okay, I don't get a licorice note, but I get where you're coming from. Brown sugar, cinnamon, yep. Candied orange, yep, absolutely. Stewed apples, yeah. There is an apple note in there, isn't there? It's 10 years old minimum. That means that the minimum age of the spirit used in the blending process was 10 years. There may have been older casks. I know some previous heresy releases we've done that had an age statement, had some quite older whiskey in them. But this one, again, we don't just disclose the distillery of single cask bottlings. It's not hard to find out what it is, of course. But we don't disclose the casks that go into the actual sort of distillery casks that go into this either. But we do like to talk about the art of blending, if you like, what Ewan is working on, why it's important for him to be able to create these kind of projects. Dry cocoa milk dust. Has anyone added water to this? Send me a bottle. Lovely dram. Be great in brownies. Gary, you're welcome to grab on Outturn Day on Friday. They'll be not this Friday. Sorry, I'm just on not next Friday. The one after, I think. The 2nd of April. Anyway, is when April Outturn. If you stay tuned, actually, I'm going to do a little bit of just a sneak peek of April coming up at the end of the stream here. Some of the other notes coming through: choc fudge, dried fruits, honey, cinnamon. Yep, all very good. A couple of people saying licorice. I'll be completely honest. I'm not getting that licorice note straight away, but I mean, palate is very subjective, and your tasting notes are going to be very different from mine. There you go. Thank you for that clarification. Mattresses used to be made out of coconut husk filling. Always had a smell about it. I guess it'd be better than smelling of dead duck down or something. I don't know. Lightly burnt bitter caramel, syrupy pomegranate, nutmeg, and a vanilla cremeux. You do like mentioning your French foods, Alex, tonight. Have you just had some French cuisine? Is this a post-dinner dram for you? Awesome. Yeah, it is. It is awesome. It's a lot of fun. You can. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's the kind of whiskey that really, like, you share that round on a Sunday afternoon or something. It's not a complicated whiskey. There's complexity to it, but it's not needing to be anything more than it is, and it's a good fun drop. By the way, it's going to be the same price as all of our other heresy releases this year so far. It's going to be $130 a bottle for a 50% 700 ml bottle of blended malt. Like, I think that's a very good deal. I think that's very good. I'm going to get one. I'll get one if you know, after Friday, after all the members have had a stab at getting them. But Darren says not getting it on the palate on nose as you stick in the nose in the old brown bag full of thick licorice sticks. Yeah, okay. I get where you're coming from. Yeah. So all I can tell you is that in the cask makeup of that particular whiskey, was predominantly Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, but there was some casks that were initial maturation in bourbon. So they were finished in sherry casks, if you like, or whatever words you want to use. Extra maturation, finished, aced, whatever you want to use. Good starter, Matt, says Darren Harry. Really appreciate that, Darren. It is a good starter. Yes, and John Hitchin. Good to see you, John. Thank you for tuning in. 2nd of April is Good Friday. It's also Outturn Day. We always land on the first Friday of every month, except at Christmas when the November big issue goes on sale, which is always around mid-November, dare I say, somewhere around that realm. And Matt Willis says Alex just has to offer the tasting note. He's lathered in duck fat and creme fraiche. Whenever I see the words creme fraiche, I'm always reminded of Gordon Ramsay. I think there's got to be at least 20 recipes that Gordon Ramsay uses creme fraiche in everything, and I rarely ever use it in anything. Water pulls back the sweetness a little. It holds together just fine, but really didn't need it. James, I didn't add water because I just didn't feel like it needed it. I feel you've got to remember, like, the other whiskeys we're going to try tonight, the other 4, are all natural cask strength, which you know. But this one is 50%. It's 50 on the dot. It's been crafted to 50. That's where Ewan finds these to be optimal drinking temperature, as he calls it. And they're just ideal, just enjoyable whiskeys that still have a lot of body at 50%. I think it'd be almost that it's the kind of whiskey I feel like would be lost at 40 or 43%. But at 50, they're nice and full-bodied. We did do one heresy release, which was the experimental release, which was, the name escapes me at the moment. It was like the blended cognac, and I think that was bottled at 44% or something like that, because again, that's where Ewan felt that particular spirit's at best. And I'm inclined to agree. I think it's one of the reasons why cognac works well at lower proofs, and adding water to them can actually really sort of change that experience quite a bit. This whiskey reminds me a bit of twinning. Who knows? There may have been some 7s in the mix on that one. Anyway, that's Spice Cannon. That's in the April Outturn, and that's coming up. And I really appreciate you tuning in and actually enjoying this preview with me on tasting this whiskey. Matt Willis says, I finished it. That was delicious. Yeah, it's a deliciously easy drinkable whiskey, that one. It's my glass is also empty, and I normally like to take a bit longer with a dram, but that's I've taken 17 minutes or so, but it's just a really enjoyable whiskey that you can Jason, our other resident historian and Perth State Manager, WA State Manager, Jason Davies. So nice of you to join us. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know these 7 o'clock starts in WA mean that you're dramming at like 4 o'clock or something, but that's not the worst thing in the world for a Saturday afternoon, is it? Let's move on. I'm going to pour the next whiskey in the lineup. Now, the next whiskey we're going to go with tonight is 51.20 Smooshed Shamrocks and Gooseberry Gueuze. So 55.2%, 51.20. I'll come back to these photos, but they're not very appealing photos. But there you go. This is the next whiskey in our lineup. So it's the Sweet Fruity and Mellow 51.20. Pour a bit of that into a glass. Now we're heading into the sort of the interesting single casks that are in this very special Game Changers lineup. Now, the reason why this lineup has been picked, not just because obviously they're new releases and they're interesting whiskies and ones that I was really excited to present for you, they've also been picked out. They've also been picked out for a reason, because they are game changers. So 1988 was the year that 51.1 was bottled. So let's just imagine for a second that you're Pip Hills. You've started this Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. You started a Scotch Whiskey Club, and then you bottle 51.1 in only 5 years after founding it, the club. There was, according to 2 people at the society in the UK who have referenced this to me before, there was proper outrage at this whiskey at 51.1 existing. It shouldn't have existed. It was, it's blasphemous. It's not what the whiskey club should be. It's not what Scotch Whiskey Club should be bottling. They should be focusing on Scotch whiskey, and so bottling an Irish whiskey is blasphemous. And how dare you, basically. However, from one of those reports I heard was that once you poured it into a glass and held it up to your nose and had a taste, all was forgiven, because it was just a fantastic whiskey. I happen to think this whiskey, 51.20, and just think about that for a second. We've had 20 casks in the space of not quite 40 years. So less than 1 cask every 2 years out of this distillery. I do have to inform you, however, I'm sorry. This was a St. Patrick's Day email blast to members. It is all gone. We don't have any of these available for sale tonight. I'm sorry. But it's an opportunity for you to taste this, I think, incredible whiskey, and just the quality of the malt in the spirit here. Like, just that alone is worth trying. So Distillery 51, I will say the name anyway. This distillery in Ireland, the Old Something Distillery, was founded in, founded is a funny word. They say they were founded in 1608, making them one of the oldest distilleries obviously operating. But they weren't continuously operating. There were vast periods of between 1806 and 1822 that they weren't distilling at all. So there was vast periods of closure. They were granted a license to distill in 1608, but they weren't distilling for some time after that. It was about 1784, I think. Yes, we are on 51.20. I should put the banner up so we can keep track of it. There we go. We are on 51.20. Great tasting note there. Stewed green apples on the nose. Hi all, I'm late for my afternoon nap. Oh, what a life. What have I missed and what are we on? You've only missed Spice Cannon. We started with Spice Cannon as a blended malt to sort of spark our palates. So we're on the 51.20 now. Fairy floss on the nose. I do encourage you, by the way, I haven't even done it yet, but I do encourage you to have a sip of water at least in between each whiskey. Reset your palate a bit. These are 5 very, very different whiskeys. Okay. Now, they don't use column stills at this distillery at all. At Distillery 51, they use copper pot stills. They make a triple distilled, 100% malted barley spirit. Some of their range does use grain whiskey, but this range does not. This is not a grain whiskey. So just to clarify, Irish whiskey, it's Irish single malt whiskey, or in this case, Irish single cask single malt whiskey. Distilled 20th of June 2002, Northern Ireland, first fill, ex-bourbon barrel. Can we just take a moment to appreciate 17 years in a first fill? I know, obviously, whiskey from different countries will react differently, from different climates, from different casks, from different spirit type, from different everything. But just the fact that we're getting 17 years in a first fill, it's very, very flossy. And let's be honest, could you think of a more apt sweet, fruity, and mellow descriptor than this? Fat, white, and juicy. Yeah, instant love it. Darren, I love this whiskey, and this is the second time I've tasted it tonight. I tasted it for the first time about 2 weeks ago. It's fat, white, and juicy is a good word for it. It's really, really viscous. Oh, 55% as well. I'm not inclined to add water to that either. I think that sits really nicely on the tongue. Matt Waller says this has serious bright blue berries and the cranberry tang on the nose. Whipped white sugar and egg whites with buttery cold scones. That's an awesome tasting note. Hints of sherbet. Liking it more after oxygen. This one will open up a bit. You can leave. By the way, you've got these are 30 ml samples. You are welcome to leave a sample, a smidge in the bottle or a smidge in your glass, and come back to it afterwards. Don't let me rush you along. But if you're doing it live with me, I really appreciate it. Irish food, yeah. Reminds me of those little packs of nuts, fruit and trail mix you get. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, Bushmills, I'm going to say the name. I'm going to end up saying the name again, is their master blender that would have been responsible for helping pick out these casks with the SMWS. It's Helen Mulholland. They have a fantastic master blender there. She does an amazing job of the spirit. And I think tasting Irish whiskey at cask strength and single cask is a bit like tasting cask strength cognac or cask strength Armagnac. It kind of is a shock to the system in some ways, but a welcome one. A welcome one. It's when you taste these kind of spirits that you don't expect to be at cask strength, and you've never actually really properly experienced them at cask strength either. Got almost a rye bread type note on the finish. Really interesting. It's also interesting to note, by the way, that this distillery only uses Irish malted barley for their base. So where distilleries in Scotland and around the world elsewhere will often import malted barley from neighboring countries, even France, from Czechoslovakia, from places like that, where they'll bring in malted barley because the price per ton makes sense to do so. It's an economic decision. These guys are using all local barley. They just never really sort of publicized or used that phrase. They've never really used that phrase as local barley. I mean, that's one of those things I think you can get away with adding 15% to the price of a bottle if you use the word local barley on it. But that's a discussion for another time. Hint of petrichor in a field of mints. Scott Mansfield, awesome tasting note. Yeah, the rye bread. That's just wonderful on the palate, isn't it? Very broad, covers like, it's very much like side to side palate. You know what? I'm just going to actually talk about that for a second. That side to side versus front to back palate thing. When you get these whiskeys that are very like oily and fat spirit quality, like this one, you get what I call like a palate reference that goes side to side in your mouth and left and right. Whereas like, I think when you get whiskeys that are quite either sulfured or very young, sometimes they sort of sit front to back, and you sort of the front of your palate and the back of your palate goes zing. Whereas I think on older and wider whiskeys like this, they sit, very much. Yeah, it's fantastic. No. So Mark Teague says, is it still 30% unmalted barley? I don't think so for these. I think this is 100% malted barley in this case. I need to double check, but I think it is 100% malted barley for these releases. No, they don't. Question, well, no, it's going too fast. Question, do they use peat in any of their offerings? No, they don't. They don't do any peated whiskies at all. And James Caden says, does anyone eat that crunchy cereal crunchy nut as a kid? Having flashbacks. I do eat crunchy nut, and I don't even eat it as a kid. I've eaten that as an adult, and I'm okay with that. Crunchy nut's fantastic. I mean, it's not very good for you. I'm sure it's just cornflakes with sugar. You know what? I'm going to add a bit of water. You may as well just add. Why don't you get cornflakes and add sprinkling of brown sugar? There you go. You've got crunchy nut. I'm going to add just a dash of water to mine. See how that holds up. Thank you, Darren Howie. He's missed, but he'll be back, of course, for the virtual after this, which is our April one, I believe, which is coming up. Our April virtual is coming up. Very exciting. April. I'm going to tell you more about April, as I said, it's a little bit later on. I've added a dash of water, and the notes, the nose has become a bit more the gooseberry note comes out a bit more now, a bit more savory. That immediately sort of like rich barley note is gone on the front. That's delightful. Truly delightful whiskey. Yes, spot on. Yeah, I think you're replying to James there, but yeah, you are. The term local barley island has changed ever since Waterford came around. Yeah, Waterford are going to change some things, no doubt. I mean, that's a new, for those playing along at home, that's a new, much newer Irish whiskey distillery. Mark Rainier and his team, I think, are very much shaping the new world of Irish whiskey over there. And I've tasted a few different variants of Waterford so far, and I think I'll return to it in a few more years. But they're doing very well so far. I have always just assumed they were geese testicles. Alex Walls, are you making a Peep Show reference there? Because if you are, I'm very impressed, because that's a fantastic show. Crunchy Nut is adult Frosties. And then I think Jez says, and Frosties is just cornflakes of people who can't accept reality. Anyway, I like that quote. that little comment reminds me of that adult Frosties. I'm done. Let's move on. All right. Who's dragging their feet here? Look, I know you're much faster than I am, I think, Willa. Here we go. Let's go on to that next whiskey then. I don't want to hold you up. The next whiskey in our lineup, let me bring it up, is, of course, we're going to go to 44.134. Spicy and sweet. So this is the distillery. Fascinating story of the distillery. 1890 it was founded. In 1900, one of the owners, the guy who was responsible for building it, moved on after only just 10 years. He was quite an entrepreneurial kind of guy. Just whilst I'm going to tell you a bit about this distillery as I'm pouring my dram of it. I tasted this for the first time at Andrew's event of Game Changers Sydney just last week, and was really, really impressed with what this tasted like. So we're on to 44.134. Okay, as we're nosing that, I'll tell you. Okay, I was just going to finish by saying, yeah, the one of the owners, Alexander Edward, who built this distillery in 1890, then went on to create. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm just looking down here. He created this with Sir Peter Mackie, was supplemental and instrumental, I should say, to the Whitehorse brand, but then went on to create Altmore, Dallas Dew, and Ben Romack. So quite a entrepreneurial sort of distillery maker, a distillery constructor, distillery person, owner. Anyway, 44.134 Super Trooper. Much more savory than that 51 straight away. Much more of that spicy and sweet flavor profile that we love at the Society. yes. Some comments I can't put up. That's okay. With water and time, this dried Indian gooseberry becomes very bright and very tropical, tinned fruit as well. Very much agree. So there's a certain sulfury note in this whiskey. Now let's examine that for a second. There are two ways you can get sulfurous notes in whiskey. One is through the burning of sulfur candles in sherry casks. Now, it was to stop bacterial infection in the casks. It's a practice that is pretty much all gone now in modern sherry cask production. There's a lot of sherry production houses now making sherry casks for the purpose of being used in Scotch whiskey maturation. The burning of sulfur candles is something almost of a yesteryear thing, and I think we're going to see that pretty much all go in all mature spirit, at least in years to come. The one thing that does dissipate sulfur is time. So the longer a cask sits maturing, the less sulfur notes it gets. However, there's the other type of sulfur, which is spirit sulfur. So it comes naturally from barley. Naturally produced during the whiskey making process. So if you cut down the amount of copper available to the spirit vapor, the higher the sulfur levels will be. So, which is especially what will dissipate over time. Maybe less so with sherried sulfur, but with spirit sulfur, it does dissipate over time of maturation. Now, this is 16 years old, only a shade younger, I should say, than the Irish whiskey we just came from, but a very, very different whiskey altogether. A refill cask, a refill bourbon barrel, 2004, 16-year-old, full maturation. I get immediately like a very like biscuity, perfumey note on this, like straight away, without like even talking, like almost like Turkish delight notes. Turkish rice pudding on the nose. There you go. Homemade stuff you get at fancier kebab places. That's a cool tasting note, James. Please throw your tasting notes in the comments. I'd love to hear more of them. This distillery was for about 100 years ish. Owned by DCL, which became, as we now know, as Diageo, and then was sold off by Diageo as late as 1998, and has been part of the Bacardi family since, and is integral to blends such as Dewar's. This has a stank, a bit filthy, really, oily and greasy. Sweet, sweaty, warm squash socks. Sweet, sweaty, warm squash socks. Say that 5 times after 5 drams. Rice pudding for sure. Let's have a closer look. Here we go. Here's our distillery. This is a yum whiskey. James, I'll agree with that comment just alone. There you go, yummo. Absolutely. This is a tasty dram, this one. There's that distillery. Have a look at the shape and size of those stills it's producing. They're very squat. So they're very large, squat stills, almost a kind of straight line arm on the top there. Yeah, lots of character coming off those stills. And generally speaking, you do get a much meatier spirit coming from that shape rather than sort of the more elegant or softer spirit you get from tall stills. And there's our whiskey that we're enjoying right now. So, and by the way, just talking spirit sulfur for a second, there's 2 types. I will say there's also, I'm going to split even spirit sulfur into 2 categories alone. You're going to have spirit sulfur that sort of gives a more sort of like meaty character, and those are distilleries like Cragganmore, Mortlach, Ben Rennes, things like that. Or you get the more fragrant style like Glenkinchie, Speyburn, Balblair, Annock to an extent, and of course Distillery 44, Craigellachie. I didn't say the name though. I sort of did. I could not deal with the. I know which one you're talking about. Well, you're talking about the pirate ship in a storm. That was a hard work whiskey. That whiskey was hard work. It was also a very different whiskey. It was like an 8-year-old first fill sherry. This is a 16-year-old refill. Is it still funky and sweaty as you remember? No reflux at 44. Well, not much reflux. No, I wouldn't say any. Well, there you go. I do get the texture of reflux. What is the reflux texture? That's an interesting question in itself. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I love this whiskey. This is my kind of whiskey. I was talking to someone just earlier today about the kind of whiskeys that they sort of knew my palate. They knew what I liked, and I said I'm a huge, they know I'm a huge fan of those interesting, often teenage casks like these that are balanced in the middle on the mid palate, have got a funkiness going on, almost like a farmyard, sweaty horse saddle kind of note sometimes in them. I'm not a huge fan of like massively peated whiskeys, but I'm a huge fan of peated whiskeys that are very, very interesting, or even unpeated whiskeys that are very, very interesting. But this one, I get that horse saddle note a little bit. I get that wet hay. Worm tubes taking me to a different quadrant of the galaxy. I like that comment. That's good. Thanks, Scott. We both think this is better without water. Water knocks down the nose and flattens the palate to us. I'm not inclined to add water to this. Again, it's already only at 55.1%. It's not going to need a whole lot of water to keep it going. Hi from the dungeon at Mjolnir. I'm assuming that's you, Alex, and I hope you're well. I get a peanut note as well. By the way, I'm getting a little notification on my screen saying that my internet's suffering a bit. Like I said, it is raining torrentially outside right now, so I do apologize if it breaks up a little bit. Stay with me. I'm not going anywhere. It's okay, unless my internet gets knocked out completely, in which case, best of luck, right? Funk is definitely there, but it's become a bit more savory and vegetal, I think. Some Hessian rather than fruit wine funk. Normally that means a drop of water might actually help a bit there, Alex. I'm going to add just a drop of water to mine. I know some people said it's not really needed. I've even just said before, I probably won't. I'm just adding literally a tiny, tiny bit here. The advantage of splitting glasses, indeed. Also, it's a big enough sample to share with someone, folks. I mean, you don't need to have this all to yourself. The water doesn't destroy it for me. That's fantastic. That's really enjoyable. For those who are tuned in just recently, because I can see the numbers sometimes move around a bit, we are, of course, doing the Game Changers pairing, or the Game Changers virtual tasting, I should say, tonight, which is about in our March Outturn of virtual tasting, exploring some game-changing whiskeys, some interesting malt characteristics, and some of the whiskeys and codes that have changed the society forever. And why not? So I'm just going to pop that up at the bottom there. Boom. If you do take any cool photos of your setup tonight, I do encourage you to share them on Instagram or on Facebook or however you want to do it, or Twitter or whatever. Just use the hashtag #TheGameChangers and we'll pop it up. It'd be great to see how you're enjoying these home tastings. We love doing this, by the way. And I say we because every other one is Andrew and myself. And sometimes it's going to be just Andrew. Sometimes it's going to be just me. But either way, we get to enjoy these packs, and you get to take these packs and enjoy them at home with someone or by yourself, however you want to do it. That 44 has done really well, actually, for me with a drop of water. I normally would have gone maybe not, but Alex Moores is sitting on a purple velvet couch with James Brown on in the background. Funk is in his soul. Well done. I can visualize that. That's a really good comment. Yes, it has more to give without water. I'll agree with that. I think it works both ways. I think I'd be very happy with a bottle of that, and I think I might have to get one. Anyway. Super Trooper 44.134. It's also the magic of refill. I get a bit of camphor in the end there with the water, a bit of rolling tobacco. That rolling tobacco smell, that pouch, an old pouch of rolling tobacco. You've got camera in my house, mate. Preferred it without. Yeah, I'll agree with that. I like both, but I prefer it without, I think, as well. Where are we? Okay. We're going to move on now because I don't want to rush you. You can keep a drop or two in your glass, but I think for timing purposes, we should probably look how filthy that still is. Come on, fill this visual. All right, it's a bit of a grimy distillery as well, isn't it? It's sort of like, it's not your typical Speyside looking distillery with the beautiful pagoda roofs and fields of grass around it and whatnot. It looks for the time period that it was built in. Actually, it does look quite industrial, and it's it's very much looks like those kind of heavy set stills and heavy spirit, heavy sulfurous spirit, but in a good way. And if for anyone who's tasted the 13 or the 17 or something in the core range, or is it 16? I don't know. Pardon me. You'll know what I'm talking about with that sulfur note, that heavy, that it often reflects itself in almost like a pineapple juice note as well sometimes, which is exciting. Yeah, just Scott said it. Look how squat those stills are. They are squat stills that have that produce a heavy, meaty spirit. Not pictured, of course, as the worm tubs that give it that sulfurous note, of course, as well. There's only a few distilleries in Scotland that still use worm tubs instead of shell and tube condensers, which change the spirit out, like the output of the spirit, quite considerably. It's only one of a few ways that it changes the spirit, but it's a considerable one, no less. Yes, he's going to miss the whiskey dedicated to him. This is the next whiskey in the pack is because of him, actually. What year was the first ever SMWS refill bottling released? # team refill. That's a very good question, one that I've never heard asked before. I would go so far to say that it could be as early as even some of the first ones, like 3.1 or 2.1 or something. I don't actually know the cask makeup of some of those early bottlings, and I don't think I think the record keeping on those early bottlings wasn't very good either, because we didn't list the cask type on the bottle until much later. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, talking about the cask type doesn't really tell you anything about the flavor, which is why the flavor profiles really are useful. But I mean, it is nice knowing, and it's kind of like that transparency is fantastic. But I'd say it was definitely one of the earlier bottlings, Mark, because while refills were less common at that point in the industry, well, no, I wouldn't say that, actually. There was a lot of refills going around in the early 80s, late 70s. So, I mean, there was look, I don't know. This is the short answer. The long answer is it was definitely one of the earlier ones, though. I wouldn't be surprised if something like a 4.1 or a 5.1 or 4.2 or something was a refill cask, a second fill sherry or a second fill bourbon cask or something like that. Probably second fill sherry. Andrew would know. He probably would. Belongs in Glasgow. Yeah, well, fair shake. And the best thing about 44 is it's a 2-minute drive from the Craigellachie Hotel. Great hotel. And great bar there as well. And great fish and chips there, actually. If their whiskey is all this good, I would have to walk. Yeah. There we go. So shall we move on to the next whiskey? How are we going for time? We're doing all right. Okay, let's go on to the next one. We're going to move on to cask 1.233, Avid Fan. Now, where's my sample of this? Oh, there it is. Avid Fan. Now, obviously, one of the reasons, I should say, not even one of the reasons, the main reason I've picked this whiskey out is because of it is the first one. It's the distillery that started it all for the society. It's the first cask that we ever saw. It was 1.1, and now nearly 40 years later, up to 1.233. So 200. That means, I just want to stress this for a second. That means that we've seen 233 casks, not necessarily presented to the society, but that's 233 casks that have passed the tasting panel. We've seen everything from 5-year-old whiskey from this distillery up to 48-year-old whiskey from this distillery bottled from the society. Those of you who have been members for a while may remember casks such as 1.183, which was a 48-year-old. and things like that. So there's been some remarkable whiskies over the years, but it's also worth remembering that 1.1 was in fact just a 80-year-old whiskey. Such is the case of how these distilleries start. It's often a launching pad. It's often where the first beginnings are. And I think that's really cool, is that sort of sense of where it's all come from and where it's all been. You can see some of the photos I'm showing up on screen now of the old school equipment, and it is an old school distillery. It's also one of the few distilleries to have retained stills that are heated with direct fire rather than steam. And they believe, and I'm inclined to agree, that it adds a certain weight to the distillate. So the other thing I'll tell you about this distillery, it is very, very, very low angel share. So they managed to hold on to their proofs very high, which is why this one's sitting at 62.4%. That would help. They fill predominantly into sherry casks. So tasting something in the juicy oak and vanilla from a first fill, I'm going to say first fill ex-bourbon. I want to get that right. Yes, first fill ex-bourbon barrel after 7 years is extremely uncommon. And the words itself, Glenfarclas, means valley of the green grass, an indication of the richness of the pasture land which surrounds the distillery, which I showed just before. That photo doesn't really do it justice. But you can see the pasture land that surrounds the distillery that was used up as a farm, I think up until about 1988, is just phenomenal. Now, this was picked out because I know it's one of Andrew's favorites, but it's also picked out because it's a beautiful distillery, and it's where, as far as game changers go, 1.1 is where it all started for us, and the story of how it all came about. And I think that's really exciting to explore. I've poured that into the glass, and because people keep expecting me to say it, look at the color on that. But it is quite phenomenal how much color that has picked up after just 7 years. I wasn't. I often get a sweet herbal note from ones. This is giving me a savory herbal note. But you know what I often get from ones as well, Scott, especially ex-bourbon ones that we've seen a few of at the Society now, is that they show such a unique window into the quality and output of their spirit. And I said before that they use direct fire stills, which is uncommon. It's an old school way of doing things. And they believe, and I'm inclined to agree, that it adds a weight to their distillate. It changes the distillate. Where they can't use coal anymore. The last coal-fired stills, that was eliminated around 2001 or something like that, when new regulations that you can't use coal to fire your stills anymore. Also, let's be honest, firing your stills with coal is a very inconsistent way of doing so, but it changed the spirit of those distilleries. I'm thinking Glendronach and Ardmore immediately come to mind as some of the two last distilleries. I can never remember which one abandoned it first. But the direct fire does add a certain weight to the distillate, and tasting something from first fill ex-bourbon, not surrounded by wine casks or fortified wine casks, I think gives a very, I say a very clear and delightful insight into the spirit. Now, for those playing along at home and who are discussing on adding water, I would be inclined to add water. We agree. Nika used direct fire at Yoichi, and it is a beauty. We haven't seen any Yoichi casks in a while, but who knows? Who knows? I poured this whiskey an hour ago, and it has changed so much. I've got lemon, lime, and bitters on the nose at first, but then the richest French vanilla, and now fresh cut grass. That fresh cut grass, and especially like French vanilla note, I do get out of a lot of ones myself, which just goes to show that I get a vanilla wafer off this one straight away. Like those vanilla wafer biscuits. I don't know what they're called. Fresh crunched lavender. Ooh. Pencil note. Now, if you get a pencil note, that's almost like a pencil shavings note. And that does show up sometimes, especially in younger whiskeys and especially in very active casks, I should say. Super light on the nose with the obvious cheesecake and shortbread. Very high taste. Clean, creamy, light lime fruits. Finish gets spirits, prickles back of the throat with waxy dryness. Now, I do encourage you trying this neat without water. It is 62.4%, so I would recommend adding some. Oh, wow. I guess you could say I'm an avid fan of that whiskey. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? No, it was a terrible joke. So, Jason, you've said you've hit the nail on the head there. Ex-bourbon distillery ones are also somewhat game changers, in my opinion. I really appreciate that, Jason. They are game changers in their own right. This is a distillery that when I say predominantly fills into sherry, pretty much just sherry casks. So tasting something from ex-bourbon gives you an insight into the spirit quality. And if you'd presented that blind, if we'd sent this out as a blind sample, I doubt anyone would have gone, oh, that's definitely distillery number one. I think it would have been more the case of, what is that and how do I get more of it? Very, very funny. Kind of tasted soapy as this, but more. The trolling hour begins. Matt Willis says, water makes it go way off vanilla cream wafers. I'm going to add that water now. Just another drop. Actually, I'm going to be a bit generous with the water on that one. Joel's, I think you've hit the nail on the head as well. Cotty's green cordial. That's an awesome tasting note. I get much more of that crushed lavender that I think Darren said earlier, now with the water, actually. It works well with the nose. I'm actually preferring the nose at full proof, though. Wow. Yeah. That's lovely. That's a lovely spirit. That one is available still. That was in our March Outturn, and we've still got, I think, maybe 16 bottles or something left, which isn't many. But if you did want to grab one of those, they are on the website now, along with the others, except Spice Cannon, which will be in our April Outturn. So I've told you a bit about this distillery. Something actually I find fascinating. The distillery was sold to the Grant family in 1865 for a princely sum of around £511. In today's money, that's about £64,000 or about $120,000. So I don't know about you, but if you could buy Glenfarclas Distillery for $120,000, I think you'd be laughing. I think you'd be laughing. That'd be pretty cool. Not that you would. But it is also worth mentioning they are one of the only completely, if not, no, not the only, but they are one of the only completely family-owned distilleries still in Scotland. They've been approached numerous times to be bought out, but they're never going to. They also like I said, have very, very low angel share. As a result, you can get whiskey from that distillery as well, which they have, 20, 30-year-old whiskey that can be still 60-something%. But a really good point here, actually, from Matt Willer, who says he thinks the DNA is obvious on this. The game changer is the ability to have cask strength non-native brand styles, bourbon cask 1, bourbon cask 24. This is why we love SMWS, a doorway into a non-standard amazing quality. Darren, I love hearing you say that because it is fascinating tasting these spirits, especially when it works the other way around as well. When we do see sherried expressions from distilleries that don't do sherried whiskey, or we see, or port casks from distilleries that don't do port, whatever it is, or in some cases, peated whiskies from distilleries that don't do peated runs. And so, well, not generally, or they've done a week of peated whiskey and they didn't know what to do with it, so we've picked some of it up. That's really exciting. So those are game changer moments as well, because you're probably referencing that 24.145 in March Outturn that vanished in a second, where that was an 18-year-old ex-bourbon cask from Distillery 24. And again, that's another distillery that is predominantly sherried casks. And I'm a huge fan of ex-bourbon casks. Personally, I do love a good sherry whiskey, don't get me wrong, but I mean, a great ex-bourbon cask that is clean and fresh and delightful and enjoyable, that's a real game changer for me as well. Do we get a percentage discount equal to the ABV of the whiskey? Deal done. No, we don't. Yeah, Bladnock is another distillery example, Joel. We've had some cracking distillery 50s before, and we've got some, I think, still in the pipe for still to come, which is great. But just, again, they are examples of whiskeys that we're bottling which are so far removed from the house style. So often, this is a really good point, actually. Often at the Society, we see casks from distilleries that don't have a core range. I mean, Malt of the Month was an 80.19, I think the code was, 80.19. They don't have a core range whiskey. Being able to taste a single cask approved by an expert tasting panel from a distillery that doesn't have a range, I think is exciting. I think that's really exciting. But then often you taste whiskeys from a range from a distillery that has a core range that's so far removed from the actual, so far removed from the core range. And you get to taste these whiskeys, like we've been saying, even with this one is a perfect example. Can you walk into a commercial bottle shop and pick up a 7-year-old cask strength version of their spirit? No, even if you could, it would be a commercial release with tens of thousands of bottles, and the profile would honestly probably be a bit flattened out, if you know what I mean, to make it more commercially viable. That's the way it often goes. I was surprised you placed this so far back in the line, but it has held up well. The nature of SMWS releases. The lineup I picked for a reason, because it's a bit of a quirky lineup, this one. It's a game-changing lineup. And the lineup is in a way takes you through a journey. And this one was almost like I thought would spark the imagination a bit, spark the palate a bit, and make us go, oh, so it doesn't have to be right at the front because it's a juicy oak and vanilla. It can be closer to the back. In fact, this is our second last one, isn't it? Yeah. So it can be closer to the back. I'm going to ask for the votes, by the way. I'm going to ask for votes on this as we go. That comment was in relation to family/single owner, which I love about distilleries that are. Oh, sorry, Joel. Okay, but you're right though. I mean, Bladnock is a good example. There's a few others out there like Kilhoman. I'm sure I can't keep track of them all because they often change quite often. But pardon me. But this distillery has been family owned since the beginning, and they will never ever not be either. That's the thing. There's no price that any company, even the biggest companies in the world, if Diageo came in and dangled a very, very big golden carrot above the distillery, they wouldn't take it. They're not interested. They're just interested in making great whiskey. And you know what? We're interested in getting these ones through that are a window into where the society started and a window into where it is today as well, which is exciting. I think that's exciting. I am an avid fan of that. I've already made that joke. I can make it twice. Okay. I think that leads us into our fifth whiskey of the night. Now, as I said before, you don't have to go at any particular pace with me. You can pour a little bit, leave a little bit, come back to it. I'm encouraging you to join in on this discussion. Pop your comments in as you've been doing. Please do. And join me on tasting these 5 game-changing drams. And you joked twice. He's not here. I've got to make up for it. And that leads us into, I think, one that I think a lot of people have been anticipating. Now, we featured this next whiskey at the Sydney Game Changers event at the Royal Automobile Club in Sydney. It was a lot of fun. I couldn't possibly tell you the name of this distillery. Not even, I think this photo would even give it away. I mean, this guy here, your ambassador standing here in the rain, just standing at some distillery. If you can work out what it is, you let me know in the comments because I've got no idea. But it was, this is a chance for us to, I thought this was a race. Some people are jumping into it already. So I'm going to pour my dram of this, which my little sample is somewhere here. 29.275 roaming in the gloaming. We've had a bit of a resurgence of the last, I'd say last year or so. I'm going to go so far as 2 years. Last 2 years where we've had a bit of a, I guess a resurgence isn't the right word. We've had a bit of a renaissance maybe of great 29s. That's where I'm going with this. We've had some absolutely fantastic 29s come through. Before I go on, Alex Moore says, hi, Mark. Sorry, I think 3.1 to 3.3 were a very, very likely team refill. 3.4 was described as this time in sherry, and the color description of 1.3 were very pale straw. I can't tell you for sure, but I put money on it. Yeah, Alex, this is what I was trying to get at. We're not really sure what this is, but, it is what it is. It was very likely. Yeah, how many ways can we not say this distillery name? Maybe we could say Dan Woolley's Distillery. Maybe we can say nice chair in the background. And that bloke needs a chin hammock. That was, of course, pre-chin hammock. There you go. I'm going to save half a dram of that roaming and the gloaming for later. But I'm going to pour a bit now. and other subtle references like that comment on screen there. No, I definitely no comb over. No, hold on. I don't have a comb. I just got a haircut. Anyway, it's just a side part, but it doesn't. Anyway, oh, Lefrog. Yeah, Lefrog is one. Lepfrog. Oh, Lepfrog. That's one as well. Look, we all know which distillery this is, but I was just saying, well, we've had I'd say a renaissance of interest and some absolutely fantastic casks come through, like this one. We've had some which have been 18-year-old full bourbon maturation. We've had some 21-year-olds that have had a port cask extra maturation. We've had some that have had sherry finishes. We've had some that have been full ex-bourbon, like the 29.273 that Jules from Whiskey and Helmet raved about, and rightly so. This one is 20 years full maturation in refill Oloroso sherry cask. In a refill Oloroso sherry butt, I should say, which is means it's a big cask. It's a 500-liter sherry butt here. You know what? On the front label, it says, we were speechless. It starts with that, but then still had a lot to say. However, words could not do it justice. If you like peat and sherry, it's a dream come true. I'm inclined to agree with that, even just the front label tasting note on this one alone. There's a certain old school charm, old school sherry, clean sherry note, and the only funkiness is that iodine note just lingering in the background from this distillery's character. Paul, good to see you. I'm glad you've joined in. Paul asks, what's your favorite from 29 so far? There's been a few over the years, Paul. 29.88, I've had the pleasure of tasting. That was before my time. However, a couple of members have been very graciously shared their bottles of 29.88 with me. That goes back a bit. That was a great whiskey, though. 29.273 is definitely up there. 29.180 was a dirty beast, but a really good fun. Look, I don't get too wrapped up in the individual 29s that we've had. I just enjoy them every time they pass my nose because they've all passed the tasting panel. They have all been approved for bottling for members. And that's the really, really important part of these whiskeys. These are not just sort of like, oh, this is what we're going to get our hands on. And that's one of the biggest differentiating factors of the society versus other independent bottlers. We are not buying casks that we can just get our hands on. We are putting down for now and the future. We've been doing that for years, for decades, so that we can take these casks, put them through panel, put them through their paces, and only bottle them if they're the best. And this one, I'm going to agree with Darren when he says, holy shit balls. And I'll repeat that one. I totally agree. This is probably one of the most elegant 29s. Now, let's just focus for a second for the fact that it's in the deep, rich, and dried fruits category. It could have been old and dignified, maybe even lightly peated, because the peat after 20 years, this is what happens with peated whiskey. After time in cask, those strong, big peated notes you get from, say, like an 8-year-old 53 or something, just go, they start really dipping down. And when you get into this realm of teenage or 20-year-old, especially sherried releases that are so relaxed, so slumbering, I just love Distillery 29. I think everyone does love 29. Land Rover says, Land Rover Bailey says, Champagne really digs this one. Lady has fine taste. You sound like a man of class, Land Rover. Hospital wards. Sublime, says Jason. Jason, good to hear. Oh, this whiskey is such a red meat barbecue, you could carve it with a knife. That's a cool comment, Joel. I'll say that thing about water that I've said, but that's fantastic. I'll say that thing about water, as I said before. Young whiskey, almost always. Sherried whiskey, tread carefully. Old whiskey, almost never. This is both sherried and old, so this is the third time tonight I don't feel inclined to add any water at all. Wow. You know what? It's just got that, I think the word for it is relaxed. It's not, some whiskeys are the sherry is almost forceful. It tastes almost stinging. Remember what I said before about front to back palate versus left to right? This is a left to right. This is a whole meat experience in the mouth. Has no right to smell that good. I could nose this for the next 30 minutes and just bore you all to tears on this live stream, but I'll let you do that on your own time. It also offers a smoky grape note. Band-Aid on the nose, which is not uncommon for this distillery. You know, that iodine kind of like hospital ward kind of notes on the nose. Seaweed, herbal, black tea on the palate, not overwhelming. Pete, love it. Got a warm, friendly tasting. I know it's not a competition, but this wins. I mean, it's got some. Look, it's sitting up against some heavy hitters, of course, but it's also a premium livery bottling. It's something very special. And I think, if I'm being honest, we're going to look back. We are going to look back on this era of, as I say, the last 12 months of 29s we've had. We're going to look back on these and go, why didn't I snap that up when I had the opportunity? I know that's one of those lines, but I mean, we look back at the time, we're constantly looking back now and going, oh, I should have bought more, whatever, 46s or 35s or 129s or whatever the codes you were looking for back then that we've seen less of lately, but now we're seeing more of these. And so that sort of ebb and flow that we see through time changes always. And so it's like, we'll look back on these full maturation, single cask sherried 29s and be like, that was something special. Scott Mansfield says, sitting on that beach, dressed in a tux and beanie, waves lapping my feet, thinking, yeah, Mackie, I'd created a malt mill too if I couldn't get a 29. That's a very specific reference, but I like it. But I get that straight away. that there's some 29s for me. There's some peated whiskies, I should say, but I do get it a bit in 29 that makes me feel like I'm on a beach in winter. I'm around a campfire in the middle of winter in Hobart. I don't know where I am. It doesn't matter. It's that sort of feeling of, it's a campfire dram, but it's not overly smoky, but it's got enough of that sort of iodine medicinal note. Can't be a Bailey hosted event without the scare of knocking over a dram. I knock over drams and glasses of water, and here's something you didn't know. One of my live streams just 2 weeks ago or so, I knocked over a whole water jug on the table, and it went all over the table, and I didn't even mention it because it was like, that's embarrassing. It's only water. I have answered that, Joel, but I'll answer it again. Spice Cannon is not available right now, but will be in the April outturn. Now, speaking of which, whilst we're enjoying that 29, I'm going to put mine down and not knock it over. ABV discount plus age. Say it again. Deal done. No, that's not a deal. Whilst we're actually, I'm just going to bring up, I forgot to put the tag up for this, but whilst we're enjoying that 29 and looking at this, and we don't need to look at this ridiculous photo of me any longer, I will just bring up some of the details of what's coming up, actually. I said I'd give a little bit of a preview what's coming up in April. Before I do, however, we do have our latest issue of Unfiltered magazine up online now. That's issue number 55, the March 2021 Australian Members Edition. It's your full monthly whiskey magazine. It goes up online every month. We tailor it for members in Australia. So it's produced in conjunction with the UK, US, and us, and a little bit of Japan and Germany and a few other branches as well. We all get together. We create this monthly magazine that's really some lighthearted stuff, but also some really, really in-depth kind of things going on as well. So you can learn a lot about what's going on in whiskey, learn about flavor. There's some great articles in there from Jenna Ely, from our US branch, from people all around the world. I do encourage you to log on. The magazine, Unfiltered magazine, is for members only. So you've got to be a member of the society to be able to access it. It is on our website, and all you need to do on the website is go to the Unfiltered page under the Society tab on the website. You can find all the back issues on there as well. You just have to be logged in to see that. So if you can't see that magazine, you've just got to log in. It's as simple as that. To log in, you have to be a member. And I know all of you watching along have a pack, so therefore you're already members. There's our front cover of Outturn for April. And so that's the first preview I'm giving you of April Outturn. It's just a little preview tonight because the full preview will be coming a week before, of course, where we'll do also a bit of a preview of some of the whiskey in the Outturn, which is always exciting. Hold on. comment here from Alex on the Renaissance point. I think 29.273 is the oldest distillery 29 the society has bottled. So that's cool. Hold on, Alex. You're forgetting the very first Vaults Collection bottling, which was a 27-year-old. So don't miss out on that one. That was 29.2 something. I can't remember the code on it, but I remember you were there at Whiskey and Helmet when we featured it with the Whiskey and Helmet team, and it was myself and Dan Woolley co-hosting that Lefroy night. So I think that 29 was 27 years old in that Vaults collection. So there you go. I love a good chill filtered magazine. No, it's unchill filtered. Carla just got an alert warning, large asteroid coming close to Earth. My immediate thought is quick crack out the 30-year-old. I tell you what, if there's an asteroid coming to Earth, I'm also opening all the good stuff. That's it. See you later. Scratch that. I forgot the 29234. That was the code. Yeah, that was a 27-year-old Alex. And I think that was the oldest 29 we've ever had, that'd be about right. I think that'd be about right. I was giving you all a preview of what's to come. Here's April Outturn, just a sneak peek of the cover. Plus, I'm going to sneak peek one other thing from Outturn. The issue, the theme of April, just as the theme for March has been game changers, the theme for April is Molten Magic, which will all be explained in the issue, of course. And the champs are back. It's the announcement letting you all know that the Australian Malt Whisky Tasting Championship is back for this year. It was supposed to happen last year, but I'm sure you can understand why that was postponed. I don't need to say that any of the CE words tonight of COVIDs or Coronas or whatever. So this is why it's back this year. And they will be better than ever. And save the date. There we go. You've seen it here first. And really great to be able to do this little preview for you right now of saying, here's what's to come. And I think that's really exciting that we've got this preview opportunity here of the champs coming. We've got this opportunity to say to you, the champs is coming. And Saturday, 24th of July. There it is. So tickets will be on sale. Of course, later on, we'll make those announcements soon, but we wanted you to put that date in your diary for now, especially if you're interstate. If you don't live in New South Wales, we encourage you to please fly in for it, stay the night. It's an absolutely ripper evening, and the prizes on offer are always, they're always massive. Like in years prior, it's been all expenses paid trip to Scotland or $4,000 worth of whiskey in a pack. But even if you don't win anything, it's a cool night of just drinking whiskey and catching up with everyone. So that's there's 2 fonts in that, Wooler. Well, there's only 2 fonts there. No, 1. There's only 1 font in that. Anyway, look, never are. Yes, a whiskey announcement event with SMWS. They'll be coming back. I mean, Alex is looking after all of that. That's fantastic. Okay, booking flights later. Not in a week or so. No, the tickets won't go on sale until about, I'd say, early May. Keep an eye out for that, though. Around May, or the first round of tickets will go on sale just for members. And Paul, yes, that's a really good point. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society back in 2019 had the full stage at the Whisky Fair, the Sydney Whisky Fair. We'll be back on the full stage again this year. The planning has already begun with the Oak Barrel. We're very proud to work with them, and we're really excited to be back. And we'll be inviting members to come up to the stage, say hello, share a dram. And, of course, bring your friends, bring anyone who you want to introduce to the society as well, because we're going to have some awesome membership offers on the day as well, on the 2 days or day or whatever happens. Fez is mandatory for champs. Yes, Fez is mandatory. Fez and kilts. Bring them all. And, yeah, fantastic. Look, I really want to thank you all for tuning in for Game Changers tonight. I'm going to sit back, enjoy the rest of that 29, because that is an otherworldly whiskey. All of those whiskeys, except the 51.20, which has sold out, I'm sorry, from St. Patrick's Day, and the Spice Cannon, which isn't on sale yet, but will be in April Outturn, are now available on the site. So the 44, the 29, and the 1 are all available on the site for anyone who wants to grab one. The 29 was just uploaded now for anyone who wanted to grab one. Thank you so much. Gary, thank you very much. I really appreciate the comments, and I really appreciate the you joining me for a dram and enjoying this evening and having a great time. The power stayed on long enough with the amazing rain and wind outside, so it means that we were able to actually do this. And it was really great to share a Game Changers month throughout March with you all. In the meantime, keep an eye out for our live streams, of course, ongoing. Maybe even a few live streams tomorrow afternoon, which will be very interesting. And I'll see you all for the next time. Keep an eye out for our April virtual, which goes on sale in the April Outturn, and the April Outturn will be in your inboxes a week before. As always, Take care, and thank you so much, everyone. Cheers.